Yes. I don't need one. You sure? Yes. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. It is 9 o'clock on the dot. I'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order. I just heard myself. We got it? Okay. Are we live on air? I want to make sure that the public are able to see as well. Okay. All right. So for the public that are watching, and if we have any public here in any other parts of the building, welcome. We've called to order. If I could, just have the minutes reflect that all members of the committee are present in person. And if I could get a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the agenda for today's meeting, Thursday, September 3rd, 2020 at 9 a.m.
Okay, and
Second.
we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. Motion approved. On the approval of the minutes, if I could ask y'all to consider a motion and a second to table those. I'd like time to sit down with staff. I think I've explained that there's some areas that need to be fixed in here, and rather than take up all the time to do that, I'll speak with staff and then we'll come back and get that done.
Mr. Chair, I move that we table the approval of the minutes until the next Finance Committee meeting, and that would be the minutes from the August 6th meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table the minutes from August 6th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 2 on non-action items on information reports.
Good morning. I'd like to take the leadoff spot on these reports and go over the GRT collections for August 2020. So as you can see, we collected 3.1. We had budgeted 1.8 as part of our 23% decrease for the whole year. That's just the way it filtered out. And so we came up quite a bit higher than what we had budgeted for. So that's kind of what we're seeing as far as a trend right now. We are getting above what we're budgeting for now. Okay. So then something Joe wanted us to do is kind of put together a more in-depth by industry report as far as where we're getting our taxes. So this is a all industries report from the RP 500, and this one's kind of hard to read, but this is the trend from the last, I think, 5 months or 6 months as to what our tax collections have been for each industry. And so I'll go to the top 10 and top 5 just to narrow it down, and it gives you a better visual. And so the top 10 industries in Roswell right now, obviously our retail trade on the far left is what's driving our industries. And as you can see, in the month of August, we had quite a spike in that. That's obviously what led to the higher collection of GRT taxes. And so that's just a visual of the top 10. I know the other 9 are kind of hard to visualize what their increase is, but they're basically holding steady month to month. and then I narrowed it down to the top 5, and this gives a better visual of where the top 5 driving factors are in our GRT collections. And so as you can see, retail trade is clearly what's driving our numbers north as far as GRT collections through this year. And at this time, I'll stand for any questions on that. I think Juan's going to touch further on GRT.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, so one of the things that we wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper is because I think when, as we were preparing the budget, as you already recall, this is just the snapshot of the region. Stephen had put together a map in New Mexico of a lot of the municipalities, how the GRT was being impacted and how it was changing. So this is from the August 2019 to August 2020 comparison. And as you can see, there are a lot of the surrounding communities that are being impacted at different levels. As Stephen pointed out in the GRT, looking at the historical, we're holding steady. But as we talked before, we are the central, hub for purchasing for a lot of the retail, since that is the major driving force. So I wanted to kind of give you all just where we are regionally with some of the communities and their percentages for August to August. The other thing I wanted to show you here, this is a new chart that I think Juanita had shared with us, a link to this website, and it is kind of managed by Harvard. It is part of the pandemic tracking how the consumer spending. It has a lot of information, and I think for New Mexico, it tracks a lot of the different counties. So I wanted to illustrate here is because we wanted to kind of get a better understanding as why, with us, we're kind of, we're doing good as far as because we are the central, retail hub. So I wanted to show here some of these surrounding counties. For example, you see here Curry County, which is in Clovis, as we saw in the prior. They started tracking it from January 20. And then, as you can see, the trend of all consumer spending. This is part of, it was just new information that we were kind of putting together. And then, as you can see, where are they right now? They're only 6.3% down versus from January of 2020. When you look at Lincoln County, for example, Ruidoso is now starting to do a little bit better. As you can see there, from January to now, they're doing a little bit better. We look at Doña Ana County and Las Cruces. That was one of the communities that we looked at as well. We believe that Las Cruces, just like Roswell, is also a hub for retail for a lot of the smaller communities around the area. So they did better from August to August in their GRT. You look at Eddy County. Of course, Eddy County is also doing a little bit better. But you can see right almost in the middle between June 1st and July 1st, that is the GRT that came in August. And you'll see the trend of what some of those activity for consumer spending was. Lee County, you see some of those trends. And then Chavez County, of course, for us, we've been holding steady. This snapshot was taken in August 16th, and when I pulled it up this morning, you can see there now we're actually almost to the same level as January 20. So this kind of just gives a very good visual of what the consumer spending has been, and obviously since we rely heavily on GRT, this is really a good tool to kind of estimate what has been the trend. As you can see there in April 1st from March, that's when everything was starting to shut down, how consumer spending just tanked. And that kind of what led to us to say, well, we got to start planning ahead. And every marker that is there, the nice thing about this website, it talks about when the governor initiated a new order and so forth. So you see those trends and lines and how that consumer spending is impacted. So it's a lot of very good, useful information and we'll be using this as well to kind of track. Not sure how long it will be maintained, but this is something that is being maintained by well-known economists and people. So I just wanted to share that as part of our review of GRT on a monthly basis.
Can I ask one question? How far back does this particular tracking system go? Do we have information of last year as well?
No, this information goes only to that point. And what I'll pass out is this is just a little bit of the abstract of the history of what this information is being prepared and how it kind of developed, why it came about. So this kind of goes up, that's why it starts as of January 20th and then moves forward.
All right, thank you. Before he moves on, is there any other questions? That was a good bit of information at one time, but good information for us to receive. good visual. Go ahead.
No, that's it. And then we'll turn it over to lodger's tax reports.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. I'm here to present the lodger's tax report. We'll get started with, okay. So you can see that July reflects the June actuals, and currently we are down. We're at 17,959 rooms sold, with revenue at 70,763. The third page will show year over year that's down 42%. That is also due to the mandates. So when we're talking about the 14-day quarantine, that's still in effect. Until that changes, we're not going to see things turn around, I don't think. I've talked to many of the hotels, and the 50% mandate is kind of what they're trying to obtain, but the rate has fallen a little bit too. So, any questions on that slide? Convention center fee, we're also collecting just from 1 to 15 nights, so I wanted to make sure that everybody's aware it's not the same analogy. And it's also down, obviously, with the room pickup. We're at 42,132, and again, that's actuals for June. We're also doing a 4-year comparison because of COVID year. We kept our fiscal year 18 on there, so we'll continue to look at a 4-year trend as we go into fiscal year 21. Any questions on that one? Nope. So our last slide here is the COVID analogy that we created. As we move into future months, I'm putting the occupancy mandate at the top. So for June, July, August, we're still at the 50%. And the first line is the STAR report. So for July actuals, STAR gives us monthly actuals, so that is reflecting July. The market is at 48.5%. So still a little below the 50% mandate, which has to do with the quarantine. Last year, they were at 80.5% occupancy. So that's a difference year over year of 39.7% occupancy. For average daily rate on the second line, the rate 79.90, last year 99.68. $99 is about the year average for this market. That's also down 19.8%. So it's all in occupancy. They're just losing a little bit of rate. We have our June actuals on the last line. So this is just lodger's tax. So we are 42.5% down, which is a occupancy of 38.4. I also have a little bit of information about next month, and it's going to be slightly down as well until we get out of this mandate. Any questions?
Okay. Can I just bring up the obvious, though, but just so that people understand, because here in a little while we're going to be dealing with some lodger's tax requests and things. We're not just dealing with an absence of people in the rooms, we're also dealing with a lowerage of cost per room as well. And so that affects that is, that tax rate as well. So it's sort of two things against us in the midst of that. I'm really hoping, I don't know if the governor has anything planned this afternoon for any changes in that, but that's such a crucial part for us down here to get that open. I truly believe when we can get that open that the numbers will rise for those rooms, that because we're right at that 50 mark there. So
May I make a comment?
yes, ma'am.
I think that if that changes with the 14-day quarantine, it will look better. I do want to mention that going into our shoulder season, which is the September, October, it does usually year over year take a trend downward because people are just not traveling as much. November and December being our lowest occupancy month, but we'll see.
Has there been any kind of studies or projections as to how long the rates per room are going to stay at I know the airlines are dealing with the same thing right now. You can fly cheaper than you could before just because they're trying to get people in seats, they're trying to get people in beds. Has there been any projections on that as well?
I think, yes, I do think that the budget hotels, which is the majority of our hotels in this market, are working really hard to steer share of the market. So you've got budget hotels competing with mid-level and upper scale hotels, which then brings the ADR down. So occupancy is the key. You know, the rates will go up, the occupancy goes up. And we've got some new hotels in the market, and I think from a corporate side, Hilton's and Marriott's will only go so low. That's just some information. But, you know, they have stakeholders, and the bottom line is profit. So however you get there, occupancy or ADR, they want you to get there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Does that conclude all of our informational in that portion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so let's move on to the review and discussion of new conceptual housing development. Mr. Morris, are you counting the days that you have to go sit in that chair?
Oh, I may be a short timer technically, but I still
Welcome
miss
this
one.
morning. Share with us.
This, as stated, this is the last of the presentations to the committees on a conceptual program to develop affordable housing and other types of housing within the city, long-term. The question we started with was basically our current city policies and practices and what we do really deterring construction activities, especially in the residential markets. As most of you know, we do had performed an affordable housing study which indicated that there's a great need for housing in the city. Thousands of units, we need them. We have a very old housing stock, a lot of it. There is some new stuff that comes in, 50 units a year is average. Some years a little bit more, some less, but it's not keeping up with the demand and also the loss of older housing. So what we are proposing is a process that will provide incentives to the development community that hopefully will encourage new market rate housing starts. There's two kinds, market, and we'll be talking about affordable, those two different kinds. Encourage development of new affordable housing units, and that is also a great need. We know that in that sector, there just isn't any real affordable housing that is of quality. I mean, it's not like what we need. We want to take vacant city-owned properties, which we have quite a few of and are continuing to acquire, back onto the tax rolls, get them off of the public sector, back into the private sector. We want to increase the number of housing units that will be using our utility services. And also, we want to replace housing that has been lost to the Clean and Safe program. It's quite a few. It's almost 300 units at this point. And so that means there are those families that used to live in these houses that are somewhere else. We need to try to bring them back. And some of these communities have been really hurt by the loss of this housing and the loss of the people in there. There's a lot of communities are right now, I mean, some segments of town are virtually deserted. You'll see the streets, the lights, the hydrants, the sidewalks, the driveways, no houses. And so we've got to replace that in order to help reinstill really a community again. And also we just want to look at ways of streamlining our land development process, making it easier for builders to build stuff. So we started with the permits and permit fees, and this is not untypical, this is a very typical type of situation. And this is what we have building permit fees, and we have mechanical fees, plumbing fees, parking lot fees if you're commercial, water and sewer tap fees, water meters. Each one of these are separate stages, separate fees that somebody has to pay. In addition, we have this thing that kind of goes back a long, long time, and it was basically to pay for an extension of water and sewer lines throughout the city back in the day, and also to purchase and develop parks back in the day. And so these are pretty significant, and they're based on frontage of the parcel. And this is in the code. And so you're looking at, as the example shows, you got $200,000 home, 100 feet of frontage. You're looking at $2,000 on a permit, plus the park and frontage fees actually is actually more than that. So that's still in there.
Can I ask a question? And it's been years since I've studied and looked at this. What do we currently have set aside in that little stash?
I can't tell you the exact number. I'd have to come back to you with that. It goes into a certain line item. I do know that. I can ask finance to check it out.
Not a problem, but I would like to have that information, if you can just
Sure.
put that in my box or in an email. And also, do we have a map that has all of the vacant properties pinned on that?
Sure. Todd's going to talk about it a little bit more.
Okay.
We developed the list, and it was everything. And then it looks pretty impressive when you first look at it until you start looking at each one of these properties. And that's what Todd has been doing, is basically trying to vet these properties, because not all of them are buildable. In fact, we get a lot, I mean, most of them are little snippets, some tail end of some subdivision that nobody can figure out what to do with, so we got it. Or for drainage purposes, it's ours. So Todd will talk about how we're going through that process to find out what we really can use versus what our total listing is. And so we really started wanting to look at what's really important here. Are we talking about short term? In the short term, we get X amount of dollars for a new house. But then when you start thinking about the long term of that house will be there at least 60 years. And every year it's providing property taxes, it's providing utility fees, water, sewer, trash. It's also providing GRT by having a family there that's generating economic activity for that time. So that's kind of like the long-term cost. And the most important one for me is having a family, especially an owner-occupied unit versus a renter. Not that renters are bad, but owner-occupied are your neighborhood tigers. They're the ones that will protect their properties much more so and help to stabilize a community. Going in and providing owner-occupied units will help to cement and reform some of these communities that have really been hurt over time by the loss of that housing. And so I would like you to think about it in terms of short-term benefits, fees that we collect, our frontage fees, and all that good stuff, versus the long-term. And I think that's really important. And especially the stabilizing of the neighborhoods, because, I mean, we're talking about if you have a stable neighborhood, maybe you have less need for police, EMTs, fire rescue calls, service, those kinds of calls. And so that is definitely a cost. It's hard to quantify, but it's there. Currently, incentives that we have in the city code right now, if you're building multifamily, you get a deduction in your building permit fees, depending on how many units that you're proposing to build. This was done initially for Spring River Apartments about 5 years ago. In addition, we have a thing in the zoning code that allow for a 50% increase in density if you can figure out how to build more on a property and still meet all of the land development specifications. And if you're really smart, you can do this. Because density is what makes up the difference in an affordable housing situation. The profit margins are much lower on an affordable unit, so the more units you can get in there, the more incentive there is for a builder to actually go in there and do that affordable housing. But we wanted to see what else can we do. So, it went to blue. First off, want to consolidate fees into a single number. Give them a single number, not all those different fees, all those other things, and a single application. Because all of those other structures means that somebody has to come in, fill a piece of paper, send it in, come in, here's something else over here. Single application, one fee. We already talked about the density bonuses that are available. Provide properties for construction activities at a heavily discounted rate, and especially for affordable housing units. What we're talking about here, that's really the incentive. The idea is we have all these properties, and we can get a couple $1,000s maybe on some of these units, but they're often places that maybe are not so desirable. We're thinking that if there's a process where we can have a builder come in and say, okay, not only are you going to get a discounted rate on your permit fees, we'll throw in a property to begin with. We'll give you a place to build on, you build it, they build it, and go on to the next one. And so the process that we're talking about is laid out here. And market rate, and this is just, you know, this is obviously for discussion purposes, but I mean, this is what we're talking about now. Market rate, single family residential, greater than $300,000 in value, make the fee $3,000. Market rate, single family, $3,000 or less, make it $2,000 and below. Affordable, which is going to be, think Habitat for Humanity, solid house, probably 160, 180 in that range. With a parcel, make it $1,000.
Can I ask a-
Properties are sitting there right now, not being taxed.
Let me ask a question real quick.
Sure.
I'm sorry. How do we get around the anti-donation clause?
Through the Local Economic Development Act, which allows for a lot of flexibility with respect to affordable housing provision and development. We already have one in place. It's been approved, not just the study, but the actual ordinance that we did. I think you were on board when we did that as well. And so that's been approved by MFA. So
Wonderful.
it lets us do a lot of stuff.
I did not realize that that was all completed and, okay. All right,
It's
thank
there.
you.
And then I can make, it's actually available, or I'll send it all to you guys if you. And so the idea here is affordable builder comes in, okay, I want a unit, give me a unit, I'll build an affordable house and rock and roll. If you already have a parcel, make it 750. Because again, those few bucks up front versus long-term costs of stability and, you know, property taxes, utility fees, hopefully less police calls in that area, so on and so forth. And modular housing, which is it is a more affordable option than stick-built in a lot of places. Now, we're not talking about mobile homes. We're talking about manufactured modular housing that meets all the International Building Code standards. So that's really what we're talking about. So it starts to look like this. And Todd, you can take it over here for a minute.
Thank you. Good morning. So what I have been doing and what I've been working on is exactly what Bill has kind of been telling you. We have all of these city properties. A lot of them are little pieces, as he described, that really aren't worth a whole lot. But then we've got some regular residential properties in different areas. So what I've been doing is I've been kind of going through, cleaning them up, categorizing them, making sure that they're all vetted, checking them for the various utilities and everything to make sure that the property is good and clean and that we can take it and release it back out into the public. So when I get the piece and take it in, this is all the information that somebody who would be interested in a property would want to know. Where it's at, what its actual value is, its taxable value, the UPC number that goes along with it, how it's zoned, the size of the property, the legal description, and if there are city utilities with it or not. So it's kind of like a one sheet, like a quick fact sheet for someone who can look at it so they can see what they can develop there. After the vetting process, I'll be working with Juanita's department to market these properties back out into the public. social media, other media sites. Obviously, we'll have some sales with just some plain market rate properties and then non-market rates. Incentives for the property sales, of course, we want to consolidate the fees, consolidate into a single form. We want to be able to look at continued property donations such as affordable housing and things like that. So we want to get this land back out into the public, so that we can build on it.
Okay, can I, just real quickly?
Uh-huh.
I would like the opportunity, I don't know what your schedule looks like, but I'd like the opportunity to get in a car with you and drive around and you show me some of these.
Sure.
And so I can get a much better understanding of what we have here. I'd like to maybe take a couple of hours and drive around and see some of these areas and see what we're potentially looking at as a possibility.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do that. Thank you.
And I think it's important to note that it's not just our existing stash of properties, but we are acquiring others through liens that we've foreclosed on through the Clean and Safe. And so if these are rolling in, they'll continue to do so. There's now coordination between Todd and our city attorney and our code enforcement folks who are running this show with respect to how the Clean and Safe program that you see. But anyway, one of the issues with affordable is the so-called affordability period. Now, this is required by state law to do something, and it's up to the municipality to kind of figure out what they want. And when I say affordability, it means that if you're the buyer, if you sell the house before the end of 5 years, any profit that you make from that comes back to the city. You can sell it, it's just you don't get to make a profit on it. Now, that doesn't apply to the construction guy that builds it and obviously then turns it over. The idea here is that we try to encourage people not to use these as flip houses or rentals right away. The idea, again, owner-occupied, that's the goal. Owner-occupied is your best group of people to have in a community if you can have it. And so 5 years is about as low as it goes. Some places say 20. I think that's ridiculous. But 5 years is, and it can be negotiated too. We can put something in the final terms, but this would be something that would be a deed restriction, goes with the property. And so that's something that's kind of required for affordable. That's part of the donation thing, but you have to be able, if you're doing it for affordable housing, then you have to have an affordability period. This, I think, is very reasonable, 5 years, and you should be able to do that. And it's not that you can't get rid of it, you just don't get to make money on it. And as soon as a developer or a builder gets done with one, doesn't mean they can't start on another one. And hopefully, and we do have builders that would love a line of these kind of lots in a community, so they just go right down the street. And we have talked to them to do that. So what needs to happen? A lot. First off, Chapter 26. That's all your fees. Need to basically gut it, rewrite it, and that's the city code. Chapter 6, building and their buildings and building regulations. Here's where all your building fees are, and basically we need a section on demonstrating in the city code what is this program and why are we doing this. We need a policy developed that basically talks about how we're going to coordinate this process. We said that there's a single application, single fee, so that process has to be seamless through 3 departments at least. And also there has to be an understanding on the part of the city council that this will significantly reduce revenues in the short term being generated by this department because of the consolidation of those fees. Again, this is a long-term thing, not a short-term thing.
Mr. Morris, may I ask, go back to that subject just a moment. Do you project that we would truly see significant reductions in the revenues, or that we would see a reduction in what could have been? Because if there's nothing being built, they wouldn't have gotten any fees at all. So that's what you're speaking of.
Yes, individually. And hopefully the idea, we make up for it in volume.
Yes.
You know, with new units coming in, that's what you really want.
Just
That's
one
when, you know,
clarification, yeah, that would happen. Okay, go ahead.
And that's why there's a lot of work here, and that's why we're asking for the conceptual approval first from the city council. We don't want to go in and just spend 200 man-hours working all this stuff, and then here you go. And there's issues. What we're trying to do is get you to feel comfortable with the framework, the roadmap, and that's why we're going to take this to city council next week for approval for the roadmap. And then over time, each of these sections will have to be coordinated. This is the last of the 5th, and, oops, I got my date wrong on August. Actually, it should be September. But anyway, city council's next week, and hopefully that will take care of it, and I'll stand for any questions.
Committee members, before I ask questions, Councilor Orpesa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a matter of clarification, are we talking about all city properties that will be included in this program, or are we talking about properties that have had liens against them?
We're going to look at every property that is not deemed to be something that we would be using potentially in the future. We have large properties that don't have utilities that need to be platted, and those are like out of this. What we're really looking for are single-family lots that are already existing within communities. Those will be our priorities. Or the lot that was shown on the example, that's I believe it's a 3-acre piece, which could be a nice multifamily section kind of thing. But we're looking at trying to develop housing,
I think
residential
for
housing.
clarification, Councilor Orpesa, are you asking ones that currently have liens or ones versus ones that the city currently owns? That would-
Exactly.
I think that's what the question is.
And the specific property I'm talking about is the Yucca property. Is that going to be included in this program, or?
Yes, it's on our sheet. That would be a residential, that's deemed to be residential.
And are the residents around there going to have an input as to whether they would support or not support this kind of program? Because I've talked to a lot of residents around that area, and they don't support a housing project. They wanting more like a park established in that area. And you know, years ago, we had some forums that we were discussing the possibilities of different things at the Yucca, and that went by the wayside as far as I'm concerned, because we never really came back with an agreement or an understanding for the public to understand that we weren't able to come up with a definite decision as to what we were going to build there.
Yeah, if I remember, sort of some of the recommendations were as a park or a historic thing or a community garden, that sort of thing. I clearly don't think it would be a commercial or industrial or office type of scenario in the middle of that community. But remember, all these transactions have to come before the city council.
Well, and the concern that I
That's all.
have is I hope that we will take into consideration the public input, if indeed there is public input, especially for that area,
Okay.
that the public will have a say-so as to what exactly is it that they would be able to support or what they wouldn't be able to support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Roebuck.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I am very encouraged by this program. I think it's a much needed step, and I appreciate the work you guys are putting into it. I think there's demand there. We want to do what best we can to. I like this. This is going beyond more than just getting out of the way, but we're actually trying to encourage development, and I really appreciate that. And I know we discussed this in infrastructure as well. The thing that I'm hoping that we can get worked out on this is you have somebody who, in good faith, buys a home, planning to live there, and they put improvements into that home, because if you move into a home, oftentimes you know, you're gonna do, homes oftentimes don't come with the yard work done, or they don't come with, you know, and so you'll go in and, but then said person, maybe there's a life change of some sort, that happens, and they need to divest that home. And that's the part where I think we're gonna need to really to dive in. And I appreciate what we're trying to do here, and I certainly agree with the sentiment of we want homeowners, we don't want a bunch of rentals. I just think that we need to think carefully through how we create those restrictions, because we certainly want people to, when they move in, to make that investment and to continue to do exactly what I think what you're talking about, which is make those investments in that community. And that is part of what, you know, I think makes a community, you know, have roots, is when people have not only purchased houses there, but then they have put time and energy into them, and money, and a lot of their own sweat, you know, to do the yard, or to plant trees, or build a little shed, or whatever it might be. So I don't have I understand what we're trying to do here, and I just think we need to make sure that we look at this very carefully, and we create it a way to where we are not discouraging or penalizing somebody
For doing improvements.
For doing improvements, yeah, absolutely.
And I agree with you. And under that last sentence there, it would be very easy to give in the documents, to give a homeowner credit for improvements that can be demonstrated. I mean, if they build a carport and a shed and a
Right.
fence and all, I agree with that. So that would get added to the price as the valuation. I think that's very good, because it encourages people to actually spend money, additional monies, into their property.
Because
So-
oftentimes when you buy a home, there's still a lot more money you've got to put into it, you know, whether some home builders put window shades in, some don't, you know. There's a lot,
I know.
It's amazing how much more money you can spend on a house after you've actually spent a lot of money on a house. But otherwise, I am encouraged by this, very much so, and I'm really happy about it. You know, I hope, you know, and I think the fee structure makes a lot of sense. You know, I hope that maybe even for a short time, that we might even be able to do if the council deems it a worthy investment, to do even a holiday from fees, potentially, to jumpstart activity and create a sense of urgency for builders. Say, get on this program now. Again, that's obviously a financial consideration on our end, but I think long-term, I think that I like the idea of reducing the fees and simplifying them as well. So I appreciate your work on that. Thank you.
The only other thing that I would like to add to it is, this is a wonderful program. It's going to be good. I would like to, when we get to those points to where these areas are identified and we start moving forward, when we do get into situations where we've got identified area that we really want to push and try to start with, I think many studies have shown you put up more lighting, it helps somewhat, but it's not going to take care of all the problem. I know there are areas in our city that still lack appropriate lighting. Sidewalks, appropriate sidewalks, safe from a safety standpoint, and it's been proven. You even change the directions of some streets to where there's only one way into certain areas and one way out. You put people into a situation where it makes harder for crime to take place, whereas just fixing that area through streets is not going to fix it. Just putting up lighting is not going to fix it. Just doing this is not going to fix it. Just putting a new house is not going to fix it. Where when we go into these areas, if we're collaborating together with infrastructure to see, is there other things we need to do within the streets department to, does this need to be a one-way? Does this need to be a whatever it may be, to try to keep those directions to where we're doing more than just one piece of the puzzle, to really make the best effect possible, to not just clean up a community, but make it safer as well.
Yeah, I agree.
So, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. When do you foresee things starting to come forward to full council?
I plan on, like I said, I want the conceptual part next week to get kind of locked down the roadmap. And then what we'll do is start programming the text amendments that are going to happen. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's, like I said, there's a lot of work that has to be done. We're talking about reorganizing entire chapters within this thing to make it all work. So probably in a couple of months before you start to see draft.
And what committee will be the driving force?
I always thought it was infrastructure, but it's clearly, it'll be one of those that I like this process, believe it or not, where you go through the 5 committees. You get a chance to, everybody gets to see it several times, ad nauseum maybe. But the idea is then you become much more familiar with it before it goes to the city council as a whole. And we get to hear from you guys.
And let me speak as infrastructure chair. You know, certainly I think that, you know, we will vet this well and try to work out all the bugs and kinks before it comes out to either other councilors or the other committees.
And legal will have a big part of this because of
Absolutely.
the contract. I mean, technically, P and Z is part of legal, but this is one of those, I mean, it touches everything. It touches public safety, because we're talking about trying to develop safe communities by introducing families back into these areas, to general services, to, I mean, it hits everybody. That's why I want the 5 committees to hear it.
Anything else on this particular item? Okay, there's no action to be taken at this time on this item. Let's move on to Old Municipal Airport.
All right. Old Municipal Airport. This is a request, again, for a conceptual approval for the master plan for our old municipal airport located out in the northwest part of town. More specifically, within there, we're looking for a recommendation on the concept plan for the Cielo Grande to accommodate the 2 projects that were funded by the through capital outlay last year. And that was the ball fields and the park, the all-inclusive park. Ball fields were allocated $850,000. The all-inclusive park was allocated for 1.41 something million. There it is. And so before you can really start to even think about, and these are in close proximity to each other, like I said, we really need to think about, we can't even do planning for utilities until we understand what the master plan is, generally speaking, because that master plan puts onto a piece of paper everything that you're trying to accommodate on that piece of property. And we're talking about trying to run utilities through an area that we need to know what is actually being approved. So before we spend money on a plan, you need to have the utilities. Before you have the utilities, you really need to know what you want to build to begin with. And so I really want, and while Cielo Grande is more pressing right now in the immediate, we're really looking for a conceptual approval of the plan that you guys have been put through ad nauseum for the last 3-4 years, but it's never been approved, and so we'd like to do that. This is the basic plan. You got 4 quadrants. Nevada and College is ground zero. You got basically a northeast, you got a southeast, southwest, and then finally the northwest up on the other side there, on the upper left-hand side. Okay, this side here is where Game and Fish is located. Nevada is basically where the runway is that kind of runs north, goes over to Montana, up to 19th Street. You got Nunop in there, you got all the Joy Center and the other 2 properties. This is the southwest is basically a residential area, very low residential densities. The first one on the bottom there would be like, it's anticipated to be a half to a 1 acre lot system. The one above it, north of Boeing Boulevard, which doesn't exist yet, would be a quarter to a half acre. And just remember, our R1 district, a minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet. So, and then the next one that we have out there is our RS at 2.5 acres per unit. So this kind of fills the gap. That was the intent there. That's what's in the code. Then we have our plaza section. Where is it? Come on. There.
Can I ask,
Yes,
since
sir.
go back to that slide you were just at, just to the north of that section you just had circled there, is that the private property line there?
Correct. That section that it's between what would be 19th Street down to about 18th Street is in private ownership.
And
we'd
do-
like,
Several years ago, a conceptual came forward with drawings and everything for that quadrant there. This, I may be wrong, but this looks different than what I had remembered being presented then. So have things changed from what the conception was then?
on the top one?
Yes,
You
on
mean-
there where the veterinarian's clinic and fire department, all of that area.
That's pretty much been the same since it started. That was going to be our multifamily apartment and the plaza section.
When you say plaza section,
I mean, a plaza
okay,
like an acre and a quarter, no more than an acre and a quarter in size. Taos, Santa Fe, Old Town. The introduction of a meeting place that is not huge, meant to be intimate. And I'll get to the site plan on that one, the concept plan. This is just a quickie blow-up of the northeast quadrant. Just again, we got a flowway, which we can't get into, we got game and fish, Noonop. This was a close-up of the residential areas. You'll see we would call it Sky King Lane, kind of an area for maybe a gated community. This is the one that you're talking about here. And I'll get into the middle. It's basically, we're looking for townhouses around the outside edge. We've got a commercial corner, basically north of the veterinarian in that area. Need a food store in the future, probably about 30,000 square feet. When the rooftops come in, there'll be a demand then for this kind of food store, and we want to kind of allocate a space for it. And the plaza, this is a weird color. I don't know what happened here. But this is the one with the plaza. And if you remember, walkable, intimate, big sidewalks, so people can actually be on the sidewalks to look, and the restaurants and such can actually have tables on the outside. The idea here is that those things that look like propellers are actually walkways across this circulation. And the plaza can't be big. It has to be no more than about an acre and a quarter in size, because if it gets too big, you lose the intimacy of what this is. You're supposed to have people and activities and wired for music. And those are my propellers. And so going back to the Cielo Grande, this one here right now, as we talked about, you got a recreation center, obviously. There's the sports complex, or the football and soccer up in the northwest part of the site. There's a large detention area and this canal that kind of connects to it. And there is an amphitheater. It's unfinished. Some nice trees and a hill, but nothing else has ever been done there. There were plans for a performing arts center there at one time. It was a flying saucer thing. So the area that we're talking about for the ball fields is right there. And the general area for the all-inclusive park is in this area, right off of Montana. So this is the two fields that we've been talking about. This was worked out with Noonop and Lyons Hondo. As we said, we got $850,000 for this, and what we're proposing to do with that, one, is to create a formal master plan and engineering plans for this entire area to support everything that would go into that. And also the development of a primary roadway into the site to connect the ball fields with the outside world. And that would be through here. That's you kind of drive down that way now, but there's no formal road. It's just a runway, a taxiway. And so to create that, start to create your internal roadway system that also allows access to the to this way, to the inclusive park area. Now, when we first started, we thought of something like this. And that includes the inclusive park. The bottom part of the white square is one of those dancing jet kind of things. There's a parking lot. We've got some sensory areas. You'll notice, I'll just bring it in, a landscaping, picnic areas, and an entry feature. The entry feature is kind of interesting. This is being to be donated by, with your approval, the Kiwanis. They're talking about something like this. you know, kind of like the game and fish thing, I just put this together to show you. But basically, they're looking to do that. The Kiwanis want to provide some entrance, and this is really your eastern access into the site. But in talking with our Jim, we said, well, what if we slid it north, directly up against there? And this outlay it basically is good because it doesn't require an additional parking lot. So the monies that would have been used to have to build a new parking lot down south now can be incorporated more directly into basically furnishing this. And then Jim, and I'm sorry, I thought I had a different one in here. Actually, the one that we're looking at, it turns that park 90 degrees to basically down to the southeast. And it just allows Jim more space when in the future, or whoever is the park director at that time, some future expansion. But the idea here is that this inclusive park would have parking, it would have landscaping, a bathroom, a real bathroom, especially with dancing jets, and those little X's there are your pavilions for basically being able to eat outside. The other thing about this is that this property is slightly separated from the activity area and yet connected to the main recreation building. And so it's close, but not right there at the same place. So there is some separation. And so that's kind of where we're going with this thing. We want to present this, this is the third, and you're the second one. We did present this already once, and it'll go through the litany, as it says here, with the ultimate culmination with city council approval, hopefully on October 8th. And I stand for any questions. And Jim is here if it's really his part.
Any questions from committee members?
Thank you, Chair. So can we go back to the big picture slide first?
Yeah.
So is that whole old municipal airport area?
This one?
No, all the way back, bigger.
Got too many of this one?
So, because I want to address some of the issues with this. I think part of the problem that we've discussed this particular, I've been in several, at least feels like a dozen discussions where I've looked at this particular exact graphic. I think there's some parts that I think are good. There's some parts that I think are difficult about it. But I think the problem that I have is that we haven't seen any options on this, because there's a huge concern among some counselors that I've discussed this with, as well as constituents I've discussed it with, about especially that land that's going to be, let's say, west of Nevada there, about go ahead and letting that go. And once the land's gone, you can't get it back. And there is concern that we might landlock Cielo Grande and might need more space there. And so, especially if there's not a particular need or urgency, why not work on some of the other parts first before approving that as part of the master plan? The other, so that's the one thing that, I'm happy to. And I think if we need to do some of these things urgently, because you need information, I think we need to keep the scope as narrow as possible of what we need council to approve until we can really deep dive into this. What we haven't done with this at all, and I've had at least a dozen conversations with the city manager over the course of my term, as well as with the mayor, that we need to sit down and talk about what our strategy for parks in this city are. Because as Councilor Pesa brought up earlier, there's some people who thinks that we need a park maybe over in that plot and at where whatchamacallit was torn down. I know that Councilor thank you, Councilor Foster, has some ideas in that, and the council needs the opportunity to sit down and hash out what is our strategy for parks. Do we want to park within 100 feet of every house? Do we want where do we want ballparks? You know, should we have ballparks on both sides? You know, those kind of things. Where do we want sports facilities? What's fair? What's equitable? What's the community want? What level of investment do we want? And then we also, I think we need to really, we've got to dig into that. And what I struggle with this presentation is that this is, I don't think there's anything wrong with these ideas, but I would love to have, we're talking about trying to, and I think what's happened, and you've dealt with this, is people have made plans and plans and plans, but no one's really sat down and said, what are the values? And what's the rationale? What's the data behind it? And it's hard for me to commit to, this is a significant commitment, and either one thing's going to happen, you know, either we have to really look deep into it, you know, or it's going to be the same thing's going to happen, is that 5 years from now, whatever we've decided is not going to matter, because what happened, or 10 years from now, because again, you've talked about all these plans that have happened, and I don't want to do that again. I don't want to just say, oh, this sounds like a good idea, we're going to approve it. I really want to be able to document it, defend it, and explain why we have come up with these decisions. What are the values specifically that we are going to our community and saying that we really want this? You know, I personally, although, you know, it's ultimate to the council, I personally believe Cielo Grande needs to be more than just a sports park. I think it needs to, we are the regional, we've talked about this retail-wise, we're the regional leader, you know, in our community, in our region, and this region doesn't have a regional park. And we need to talk about what is the value of having a regional park. Is it something we want? Is Cielo Grande, should Cielo Grande be that? Certainly it's got the space to be that. But in this current plan, it becomes a sports park. And maybe that's what the council wants. I'm not sure. And certainly there's some merit to that idea. But I think we need to discuss all those ideas. And that, to me, is a long process. So I don't have a problem with where you want the ballparks. I think that in any case, that's probably going to be the best event. I don't have a problem with what you present for the. I think that's a great location for the all-inclusive park. You know, so as far as like dealing with what's there on the ground now, that those things make sense. But I would love to, and I really want to encourage, you know, staff to, you know, if we can narrow this request now and not ask for us to approve the stuff up there, not ask for us to approve the stuff down there, you know. And something I know that we've discussed, and I've discussed with the city manager and probably the mayor and probably a bunch of councilors who, you know, I think everybody's pretty much on board with getting 8th Street moved. So let's take the things that everybody's on board with, let's get those done, but then things that we need to do now, but we have to take a step back, or else there's going to be another city council having the same conversation, 10 years from now, if we don't do our job right and really think through this and really understand what the values are, and get the supporting data to support these decisions. You know, we're talking about, you know, all the mixed residence use upstairs, and I like that idea, don't get me wrong, I think it's a good idea, but, you know, where's the data backing up why that's a good idea, that we need that built in that area? What's the research? There's got to be something more than just the opinion of staff, blessed by a council who says, oh, I think that's kind of a good idea. So, because otherwise, we're going to do it, we'll pass it, but if we haven't really put the thought in it, most likely it's never going to happen. It's just going to be another plan that sits on the shelf. So that's my concern. So I hope that I really want to encourage you, encourage staff to think about considering narrowing the request that you need to get these two projects moving forward, narrowing that down to a narrow focus, so that, you know, and then we have to as a council, and this is on us as much as on staff, we have to address the issue of parks. What do we want parks to be in this community? Because we've got to come together, we've got to figure out what the compromises are, figure out what our goals are, and shoot for those goals. Otherwise, we're just going to be a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it's going to be this hodgepodge, whatever kind of happens and whatever kind of boils to the surface. And that's what I'm most concerned about. If we want to do this well and prepare our community for the future, we need to think through that and come up with a really supported strategy with with good data and plenty of time for discussion. So, and I'm just not willing to commit until we have that discussion. I'm not willing to commit to locking in Cielo Grande in this area until we've thought through all of that. So I yield. Thank you.
Okay. Any other councilors? Councilor Orpesa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have we already secured the $850,000? I think that's what the amount was.
It's, yes,
But we haven't done anything with it?
I haven't done anything with it.
Does that $850,000 include the building, the road that you referred to?
It allows for it because that's access to that property.
And approximately how much would that road take up of the 850?
It wouldn't be a standard road with curb and gutter and all that stuff. Probably, Louis, any idea, rough? We talked about it. Just from college, the one from College to Montana, just as a access road,
Give me a length,
1,000 feet?
1,000 feet, 250,000.
250,000, so that leaves around 600,000 for the design.
But it's not going to cost that much. The design probably, I'm going to think, a good set of architectural plans, no more than 250. And that's on the high side.
When that design is done, what is the next step as far as trying to acquire the $13 million?
That'll be for a future. I won't be here.
Well, and that's my point, that it's a future thing. It's not something that is imminent right now.
Right?
And so, you know, we've got a lot of infrastructure needs in the community that I think the ball fields are something that should be put on the back burner since we haven't even started them. We ain't even started the design yet. And so I see, my concern is putting this on a master plan and not being able to complete it. Or if we do the design, it may go in a shell somewhere, like the other master plans have gone. Like the master plan back in the 1990s, late 80s, that master plan included the softball fields in that area. And as you indicated, the amphitheater didn't get completed. It got started, never got completed.
Chair.
So what I'm saying is that we've got so many needs as far as, and anybody that ran for city council this past year, I think they can vouch for the number one need is the infrastructure as far as the roads are concerned. And I see this as a luxury item, not as a necessity item. And so, and when we discussed the ball fields, one of the things was that one of the issues was trying to bring in tourism. You know, I've been here 50 years. And never in my 50 years have I seen Little League have tournaments. Never. Other than district tournaments and those kind of things. And so now Little League is kind of getting in with the USSSA, and the USSSA, all they have is tournament teams. And the softball fields is a good example. The softball fields were supposed to be for girls only, but USSSA came in and made the argument that they needed to have those fields for them as well, because they were going to be able to bring in hundreds of teams for tournaments. Well, it never happened. They brought in one tournament that was about 30 teams. Clovis is the one that ran it. They brought in another tournament. I don't know what the number of the teams were, but nowhere near the same amount that they had promised. The vision of bringing in over a 100-team tournament has been since 2013. And it has never happened. And the reasoning that I heard for this ball field is to bring in tournaments. And if history has anything to do with it, or will tell us anything, that's not gonna happen. So I'm saying that based on what I've seen, that those ball fields should be put aside for a future date, and we put money on infrastructure such as the roads, and the roads are the number one concern that the community has, or at least that's what I heard. And so I'm not supportive of this, and mainly because both Noon Optimist and the other league, the baseball league, they have put a lot of money into their fields. And they can bring in tournaments right now if they really wanted to. I've been involved with softball for a number of years, and I've gone to a lot of tournaments. And I would tell you, Lubbock, for instance, they have separate fields. And you may play on field A one day, and field B may be across the town to be playing. Las Cruces is another one, that you can be playing on Hag Field, or you can be playing on Field of Dreams. And they're on totally opposite side of town. And there's other communities like that. So it may take a little bit of imagination, but you can bring in those tournaments right now if you wanted to, because you got plenty of fields. You got the east side fields right now that are not being used. And so you can have a division on Noon Op, a division on the other baseball fields. And you could have some at the east side as well. We don't need a brand-new facility just to bring in tournaments. If that is the focus, we can do it right now. You know, you can bring in a tournament, and you can spread it out around town. And so I don't agree with the, I mean, sometime in the future, I think we may need, if we ever have the money to afford it, that would be a good thing to have. But at this point in time, the way our roads are, I don't think I can support it. Thank you.
I'll yield to our others. I just wanted to say real quickly, Mr. Morris, I don't want it to just, be a frustrating session for you. I appreciate the fact that there's plans going into this. I know that when we did so much work to the softball fields, both the girls and the guys, it was done so hastily and so quickly that there were a lot of significant problems that have come out of that. We've got things over at the girls' area that because of design, because council, that came sort of as a shock. It came quickly. There wasn't planning done, and the money was put towards it, and then we got major problems. And then I remember a situation with the the men's softball, where we were going to fix just a couple of things, and then thousands and thousands of dollars in one meeting was just dumped into that project. Just to give it a quick brush over, I appreciate that we're actually planning and trying to do things correctly on this one. So I just wanted to mention that. Councilor Roebuck, I'll go with you first. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, for clarification, if this money is an allocation from the legislative dollars, so this is not money that we could use on roads, we could use on infrastructure, we could use on anything but what we're talking about. In fact, it sounds like you guys have found a creative way to kind of use a little bit on infrastructure and get a little bit of roads out of that $850,000. So, I think the fact that there hasn't been tournaments here before does not presuppose that there won't be tournaments here in the future. If we have that kind of thinking, then nothing's ever going to change. And I think that's a flawed way of thinking if we're trying to make the city have progress. So, but that being said, I don't think that the primary purpose of this, I think that was one of the fringe benefits. The primary purpose of getting these new ballparks was not to draw tournaments. It was to replace facilities that are outdated and falling apart. You know, I've been to New Ops. My kids played a season there, and it's not a something that, you know, I mean, the New Ops does what they can with it, and our community appreciates what we have. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to say that, but it's it's about as low as you can possibly get. You know, I'm sure there's probably, if we really went out there, we could probably, if code enforcement went out there, they probably could shut the whole thing down. It's a dated, old facility that needs replacement. So I don't know if we're going to do it in the future, you know, when this is, you know, if we don't do it now, when? Now is the future, especially in city government. Things take time, and so we need to get started on this with the resources that we've been given by again, this will not affect one iota, I assume, unless the staff wants to disagree with me, this will not affect one iota how much work we can get done on roads.
No, sir.
Or how much work we can get done on the infrastructure, which again is something that I think that you know, we are pushing to try to increase you know, what we can do on roads, because we know that's a big issue out there. So it's discouraging to hear in our discussions that we can't do something because it hasn't been done before. And that kind of ideology holds back communities, and we have to be looking forward. We have to be making smart steps forward, and we have to try new things. Part of success is failure. You have to try things, you know, and sometimes things fail, and you learn, you get up, and you keep moving on. So I'm not aware of the efforts in the past to bring tournaments to Roswell personally, but we need to look at if those were indeed sincere efforts. We need to look at those efforts, see what went wrong, and figure out how we need to change our strategy. I just think we need to be careful about saying, well, we haven't done it before, therefore we can't do it again. And again, I just want to emphasize, and I know I said it 4 times, I said it a 5th time, because I think it was self-evident, but that these funds cannot be used on roads. These funds cannot be used on roads. They cannot. If we don't use these funds, they just go back to the state. I yield.
Let me recognize Councilor Kennard. She's been asking for a while.
Thank you, Chairman. So you answered my question. I am the most freshman, so I just wanted to make sure that the grants that were issued to the city cannot be used on anything other than what is specified in the grant request.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Councilor Orpesa, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The thing is that to some degree, that statement may be right, but there also is a process that you can ask DFA to reallocate that money for other purposes. So yes, and I wasn't suggesting that we use $850,000 to address our infrastructure as far as streets are concerned. By no means was I suggesting that, because I know that the money from legislature is purposed for a specific project, then it should be used for that project. But there is a process where you can go back and ask for that money to be reallocated for another project. For example, you had the money allocated for the Yucca Center. Well, $100,000 of that was repurposed for the splash pad. And some of that money was repurposed for the Boys and Girls Club roof. And so there is a way of asking to have that money repurposed for another issue. And again, you know, when we started talking about the ball fields, I specifically understood, and this is my interpretation, that the reason that we wanted to bring those ball fields was addressed with tourism, sports tourism. And so we wanted to make sure that those fields were going to be play-only fields in order to bring in tournaments. And the fact that we haven't been bringing in tournaments doesn't mean that those tournaments are going to happen or not going to happen. You know, but the thing that I see is if there is so much interest in tournaments, or had been so much interest in tournaments, then they would have happened. Those leagues would have been able to make the arrangements to be able to use all those fields. So what I'm saying is that the interest has not been there to bring in tournaments. I'm not saying that it won't happen. It may happen, I don't know. But based on how we were told by the baseball people concerning the softball, it didn't happen. Those 100-team tournaments has never been to Roswell, as far as Little League is concerned, and neither softball for that matter. But softball continues every year to bring in or at least 1 or 2 tournaments per year. Not this year based on the situation that we find ourselves in, but nevertheless, you know, I haven't seen the necessity or the willingness from our baseball organizations to bring in tournaments. And so basically the message that they're sending to me is, we need these new fields in order to bring in tournaments. Well, no, you don't. There's other ways of holding tournaments without having new fields. Thank you.
If I can say, then Mr. Fuentes would like to speak. Just a couple of things, just to address some of that. Number one, I would agree with Councilor Orpesa that yes, technically, there is a way of asking DFA for a change. I would dare say in a pre-COVID climate and a current legislative climate, current governor climate, of the way that spending is done right now, I'd say that, yes, we'd have a good chance at maybe getting a reallocation. I'd say right now DFA is looking for anything to be able to pull money back in and utilize it in other areas. I think that if Roswell wants their share of finances in this, we'd better back this consideration, and we'd better be right within the scope of what this direction is, or we're going to see the money taken back. We saw that under Bill Richardson when he was governor, with another facility with Lyons Hondo, right in the middle of construction, right in the middle of everything being done, major crisis with the economy, and the money was pulled away. And those kids there didn't get to play on that field for quite a while we were trying to get that fixed. I don't want to see another situation like that. I think that if we have the opportunity, something has been approved, that we need to make those considerations for moving forward. I will say one other thing. I remember, because I was on council when the approval was made for the softball fields, that was one of the big pushes then, was that we were going to have all these tournaments and everything, and it didn't come. Do I think that what we've done with the softball fields there for the girls has been a bad thing? No. I think that we have a better facility, and I'm okay with having the better facility. I just see this as an opportunity to not just have a better facility, but have one done right the first time. So I think those are things that we've got to consider. I have not heard, but there again, I'm just new to the council again in the last few months. I've not heard about these being built just for the possibility of bringing in all these tournaments. One of the reasons that I have heard about them being built was for unification across the city, to give all of our kids in the city a fighting chance to have the same opportunity and to have that, the unification that this city truly needs to have. So I have not heard all those concerns as a possibility, so I just wanted to bring that up. I want to yield to Mr. Fuentes. He had asked to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick to the committee members. So I looked at the agreement, and actually there is a reversion date of 2024. So what I wanted to share is this is just the first one of the steps that we're just following through on the directive from the city council, because this was an appropriation that was at the top of the list when we requested it last year, and they got the funding. So just like the all-inclusive park, this is just the first step of that process of planning and moving forward with these projects. This project did make it again on the list for the review this afternoon, on the list of projects that the council will be discussing and prioritizing for the ICIP. If there's a different direction than, from the council, then obviously we can follow that direction. But I just kind of wanted to point that out, that this was, as staff was directed, follow through, and this was part of that first step, but definitely directions can be issued and revised, and we can definitely take a different direction if the council so chooses.
Thank you. We're not taking any action. We're just a presentation, and this is in the infant steps of this, but it is a necessary, and I appreciate staff being vigilant and trying to make this the best we can. All right. Anything else? Councilor Roebuck.
Just for a point of clarification, and if Jim remembers any differently, or any of the staff knows differently, I'd sure like to hear it. But I've been involved in, I think, nearly all of these conversations, if not all of the meetings with dealing with these ballparks. And I don't remember at any time any sports league telling the city that they would bring in tournaments. I think it was an idea that we discussed as a group. Jim, is that your recollection as well? Can you speak to that real quick? Because I don't think that and I want to be clear about this, that none of the leagues said, hey, if you build these ballparks, we promise, or we're going to try to bring in tournaments necessarily. But if you guys want to,
It was at a council workshop, I think, that the sports tourism.
I remember that council workshop we were talking about. Yeah, but you've been involved, like, obviously negotiation
To your
with the leagues.
point, I don't think anybody promised in the future there'd be tournaments. I think what we're looking at now, you talk about having something finished with all-inclusive playground. We're trying to consolidate, okay? We get the infrastructure done. You know, if you build ball fields, football fields, whatever, we need to know how deep the sewer is, where the water lines are, what's it going to cost for electric, and that's what this is for. Hopefully, if we do put that road, that finishes that quadrant, you know, where you have the all-inclusive playground and the rec center and the parking lot and the skate park. We've actually gone ahead and finished what we said we were going to do. So, no, I don't remember anybody promising anything that they were going to bring in tournaments. It might have been discussed. We have ball fields all over town. They probably need a little bit more love. Okay, so we get them all in one spot. Logistically, our crews can go to one spot, take care of business, and leave. 654 acres, I think, of parks. We're all over town. Trying to narrow that in a little bit so we have our equipment and our staff in one position, and we're not paying to drive all over town. So I guess that's for a future discussion, but right now we're just trying to get the infrastructure so I know how deep the sewers are and that kind of stuff. But to your point, I don't remember anybody promising anything.
Yield.
All right. Anything else? All right. I believe that does it for that. Thank you very much. We'll let him get back to the slides, and whoever's going to be presenting for the resolution consideration for amending the budget. Mr. Fuentes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Chanel and Stephen had to leave. They have interviews to conduct in just a bit, so I will be covering this item. And this is just a housekeeping, as we normally do every month, to kind of make some budget adjustments to the fiscal year 21 budget. What we have before you is a resolution to adjust the revenue in various funds in the amount of $34,000, and on the expense side, also to various funds in the amount of $1.2 million. The resolution itself kind of goes in detail as to some of the specific funds and line items that are being adjusted. One thing I do want to point out to the committee is under bullet point number 3, if we could kind of just to make a correction on that sub-bullet point of received damage claim for signed damage of $89. That is misspelled, so we want to make that correction. Again, this is a standard resolution that we'll be presenting to the committee and the city council on a monthly basis as we receive different additional resources, and also as we have to adjust some of our expenses. So this will be a recurring item that will be presented to the finance committee and the council. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions or concerns on the budget adjustment consideration? It's going to be page 30
31.
and 31. 30 is the abstract, 31 is the actual. Any questions? If none, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to consider approval of Resolution 20-XX to amend fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 approved budget.
Would
To
that
the
include
council.
the correction as?
Oh, with the
Scrivener.
correction to the word damage in the third bullet point.
Thank
Under Fund 2623, to consent agenda. That would be next week, September,
Regular September meeting.
regular September meeting. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second for this resolution, amending the budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2021, increasing the revenue and offsetting expenses in 7 funds with the Scribner error to be fixed as well, sent to consent agenda. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Continuing on to our next consideration, recommending to council to dissolve furloughs through December 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. This was a recommendation initiated by Manager Nebb to make a recommendation to dissolve the furloughs through December 2020. As we have presented earlier at the meeting, the GRT has been coming in higher than anticipated, and we're very, optimistic that hopefully that will continue. But we also want to be able to move cautiously as well. As you can see on the previous slides that I showed on the consumer spending, it really goes up and down. It's really unknown still, but we are seeing promising signs that will continue. So the first 2 months, as I indicated here, of the GRT was estimated at 3.7. We've received 6.1. So we have a net of 2.3. Some of that, as the council has already taken action of allocating for different projects, the library, the gap funding in the Boys and Girls Club, and so forth. So if approved, a budget amendment will be presented at the next city council meeting. It's not included in this amendment, but because we'll have to kind of develop the figures that we'll have to adjust all of the budgets. So and with that, Mr. Chair and committee members, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions? Councilor Orpesa, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was my understanding when the furloughs were, when we approved the furloughs, November and December were not included in those months.
That's correct.
That is-
So actually, this would only do away with furloughs for September and October.
That is correct. And even, I mean, again, if the council or the committee wishes to, you are correct. November, December did not include any furloughs. We feel comfortable right now with what we have generated GRT that not only will we be able to cover September, October, but if the committee feels comfortable extending that further, they can do, we feel comfortable doing so as well.
Because, well, to me, I guess being more specific, I mean, not that it really matters because they weren't included. So unless there's some hidden item somewhere that we're not aware of that perhaps November and December were going to be included somehow?
Mr. Chair, Councilor President, no, it's just when we initially discussed, it was to dissolve the first half of the furloughs, and, you know, being the first half, we just consider, okay, the first half is 6 months through December, but there are no furloughs program. There was no intent of having any furloughs in November and December, because that was the action taken by the council.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilor Pace, I think that the rationale for using the wording through December was it's just a clear understanding that the first portion of the year is wiped out. But yes, I completely agree with you. By technicality, it is a September, October, but for just clean record keeping, it shows it through the first portion of the year. Let me make one other correction. This is actually going to be heard today in the city council meeting today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
It is scheduled to be on the special session
Okay.
item.
So we're just being asked to give a recommendation to council so that when the motion is made, that the motion is made with or without a recommendation from this committee to dissolve those furloughs. Did you have something else, Councilor Orpesa?
Well, you know, as far as the public is concerned, this one implies that November and December were included, and so the council is being gracious enough to do away with those 2 months, which is not true. And so from that standpoint, I think the public should understand that it's just 2 months that we're talking about, not 4 months.
Okay, so for clarification for the record, whoever's taking notes, for clarification for the record, I'm going to ask that the motion remain the same, but if it could just be stated for the record that it is indeed September and October that employees will not be now responsible for and furlough, and they've already been given, there was no furlough for November and December, so that for clarification, if you can just add those to the minutes for the public, okay? I will entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend to City Council to dissolve furloughs through December 2020. As the matter is already on the agenda for this evening, we won't put it to any particular agenda, but this will just be a recommendation to the full council from this committee.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, the motion is to send to full council with a recommendation that the furloughs be taken away through December 2020. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, next on our agenda, the recommendation for the landscape architects for the Roswell Market Wall Project.
Good morning, Chair, council members. I'm here to present you the award recommendation for RFP 20009. The City of Roswell, we sought proposals for this project based on a grant that was funded through the New Mexico Main Street. We were awarded the grant back in December and have gone through a few steps to see this project through fruition. This would be the last step within that grant policy. Our council did approve Resolution 2017, which authorized the support of the grant funding, which is a 20% match for these construction documents. We did receive 3 proposals from firms. We received them on August 4th. The concept is to have them develop construction-ready documents for a specific downtown area that is undeveloped that would create a market walk and event space. You can't really see on this map very clearly looking at your screen, but it is in the downtown district between Second. It does cross Second from Virginia, kind of where the silo area is as well. The evaluation committee reviewed all three of the proposals. They did meet, and they are recommending the award of this project to MRWM Landscaping Architects. Some of the reasons why this firm was selected, without going into too much of the RFP, was due to their organizational experience, references, and technical expertise. The main one being the research that was done on our community specific to the project and to the scope of work listed in the RFP. So part of the assessment that the evaluation committee team did as they were looking at what was relevant to the proposal in the scope of work, most of the candidates that submitted had very comparable expertise and technical expertise. However, again, MRW did have more background research, very specific to Roswell, very specific to the blocks and the districts that were in the scope of work. The other thing that set them apart from the other proposals was the interview. In that portion, it was very well organized. It addressed all the questions very thoroughly and specifically. One thing stood out a little bit more clear than the other interviews is that they do have a very cohesive team with a vast knowledge of this community. And so with that, I'm again just here to present the award recommendation of RFP 20009 to be awarded to MRWM. And I will stand for any questions.
Any questions or discussion from committee members? Okay, Councilor Orpesa, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just out of curiosity, where is this firm from?
They are based out of Albuquerque.
Albuquerque?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
thank you.
Anything else from committee? All right, I'd entertain a motion.
Can this go to consent?
I believe so.
Okay, great. Then, Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend to full council the approval to award RFP 20-009 to MRWM Landscape Architects for the preparation of a concept and engineering plans for the Roswell Market Walk project to consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second to send to full council next week for the consent agenda for the rewarding of this RFP. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you. I'm still up. I do have lodgers tax requests to present to this committee. Before I go into each of the three, I did want to present you guys with the 2019 calendar year of lodger tax awards. We did receive, we awarded 10 events, and this slide really showcases the amount of lodgers tax that was awarded for each of those 10 events. The room nights that were actually rented out based on our STAR report data. Again, this is a new research and software system that we started using as of January 2020, and we were able to get the actual room nights per month based on this report for 2019. And then also indicated on this report are the estimated room night revenues generated by the event, again utilizing that STAR report and the ADR rates at the time. The very last line shows you the revenue that was generated for lodgers tax. So the amount of money from that specific event, the 5%, that brought in hotel stays and the amount of lodgers tax that that event generated. for that month. So you can see we will have 3 events to review this morning. One of them being, if you look at the March, it's Roswell Symphony. They generated $752 in lodgers tax revenue and 40 cents. In May, the Hike It and Spike It event for the month generated $3,750. And then the Milkman Triathlon, which was in June, June, it generated $372.50 in lodgers tax. So having that background information, I'm here to present the 7th Annual Milkman Triathlon.
Can you go back to that slide for just
Sure.
a moment? I have a question. When I look at Hike It and Spike It, and then I look at the Eastern New Mexico State Fair, 577 rooms with Eastern New Mexico State Fair, but brought in less than the 500 with Hike It and Spike It. What am I missing on that?
It's the estimated number for Hike It and Spike It. You'll see the 2 little lines on Hike It and Spike It. We had to estimate because there were 2 other events that were occurring at the same time during that same weekend when we pulled the report. I know that 577, you're looking at the dollar amount. Again, that average daily rate is different in September than it
Okay.
is in May, because May, it's usually over Memorial Day weekend, and so the daily rate is much higher.
I
That's why the
understand.
revenue is different.
Okay. Councilor Roebuck, did you have something?
Yes. And I guess, I don't know quite, this is more maybe, I don't know if it's a point of order or what, but do you, Chair, and this is, do you want, would you think it would be appropriate or helpful to have a general discussion first about what our feelings are about moving forward with lodgers tax in general before we take all these things as an individual thing? Because and I don't know, I don't know exactly where I stand, but if we're just going to say that we're going to table all these things, or if we're just going to say that we're not ready to start doling out lodgers tax yet, lodgers tax dollars, it might be, if looking at these, none of these are that urgent. It might be, we might have a clearer picture in a month from now, and if it would not hurt any of these events where the wait on the decision, maybe it might just be best that we just postpone having this discussion for months from now. We have better information.
Let me say this, Councilor Roebuck.
I'm open to whatever, but I
Sure.
just wanted to throw that out.
I understand we have
Yes.
some folks that are scheduled to speak to us concerning these.
Yes.
Who do we have, and or do we have representation from all 3?
I believe, yes, we do.
Okay.
Jeff, can you tell me if they are still on?
I think let's do this. I know that they are completely separate items. I understand that. But I think that the order that we have them in is Milk Triathlon, then Hike It and Spike It, and then Roswell Symphony and Orchestra. I think what I'd like to do, unless the committee has any concerns with it, is allow each of those entities to speak to us for a few moments, and then we'll collectively determine if we want to take these separately, how we're going to move forward, okay?
I'm fine with that.
All right.
Thank you.
So who do we have representing the 37th Milkman Triathlon? Is that online or is that in person?
Online.
Via GoToMeeting, and if we can get them in, who will I be speaking with?
Susan, Kelly, sorry, they changed.
Kelly? Is there someone online right now with Milkman Triathlon that is requesting to speak? If so, if you could identify yourself so we can know that we've got you. Let me make the request once again. If there's anyone on the is it via GoTo?
GoTo,
Or other online services that is dialed in with us that desires to speak at the legal committee meeting concerning the 37th Milkman
Finance.
Triathlon request for funding? What, did I say legal? I'm sorry, finance. I still have jet lag. I'm sorry. Finance committee meeting. then if you could speak, the 37th Milkman Triathlon, if there's anyone online that requests to speak in that, you'd identify yourself. All right, let the record reflect that there's no one to speak on behalf of Milkman Triathlon. Is there anyone in the via GoToMeeting lineup? If you would unmute your microphone and let us know that you're there for the funding request for Hike It and Spike It. If you could identify yourself.
Hello, this is James Matucci. I'm the local organizer for Hike It and Spike It.
Yes, sir. It's good to have you with us today. If you would, please, you're welcome to speak to this committee.
Absolutely, and I know that this is a difficult time for everybody, and so many things have changed because of the COVID. I mean, our event was canceled this year, which was going to be our 25th anniversary of the event. Clay Avery and myself are the local organizers. We've been either doing Gus Macker basketball or Hike It and Spike It for 33 years now, since 1987. We quit doing Gus Macker basketball and focused just on Hike It and Spike It a while back. We are Roswell's largest weekend event. We happen Memorial Day weekend every year. We're the world's largest flag football tournament. Last year we had 471 teams, which equates to 3,368 players come to Roswell to participate. Out of the entire United States, we had 31 states that people came from to participate in. Our total estimated attendance for the 3-day event was 37,000 people. We have players that range from 5 years old to 50. In 2019, we did have 703 female players, so this is not just a bunch of guys out there playing flag football. It's kind of a festival of flag football. We have over 500 different volunteers, and in 2019 we received $24,999 from lodgers tax. So there's kind of a brief statement. I was looking at your report earlier, and I don't understand what your report was on the lodgers tax. Obviously, we sell more than 500 rooms, and I know there are other events that happen, but I'm not sure how many weekends there are no rooms available in Roswell, but Memorial Day weekend has been that way for the last 20 years, primarily because of our event. So I just wanted to say I don't understand what those numbers are. We generate last year, with the 471 teams and the 3,368 players, a direct economic impact of $3,286,588, with an indirect economic impact of just over $12 million. I think everybody knows our event that has lived in Roswell for any amount of time. Even though we do give money to charity, our event is primarily designed to create an economic event for Roswell, New Mexico. There is no one organization that benefits or profits from this event. This is a community event. Specifically, the success of the event is because no one really benefits from it. Everybody benefits from it, and it's truly been an amazing event. It's been our pleasure to do it for the last 25 years, and no matter what happens today with this funding or not, we understand that you guys are in a difficult position as well. So the city has worked with us amazingly over the 25 years. I believe we've provided over $500,000 worth of funding to the city through either lodgers tax or just stuff that we've bought for the city out at Cielo Grande. The sound system, the storage unit that's out there. I think we bought 6 different vehicles for the city. And it goes on and on. The rolling stands that they have out there, that Hike It and Spike It took the time to get that through the state as well. So if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Otherwise, that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Believe it or not, I have actually been a participant at Hike It and Spike It. A number of years ago, we actually had they called it a celebrity, I don't know what you call it, but a weight loss thing over the summer. It was called Park the Pounds that we came up with, and County Commissioner Will Cavan and I were part of that, and Radio Tom Ruiz and some of the others, and Commissioner Cavan kept his weight off. I did not, but we actually participated and played a game out there and had a lot of fun, and it is a phenomenal event, and I do appreciate.
Is there any video
everything
evidence of that?
What's that?
Is there any video evidence of that?
None that I would want you to watch, I promise you that. So anyway, but thank you so much. It is a vital part of our
And
community.
is it on VHS?
Exactly. Any questions or comments for him at this time? Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your patience with us and speaking to us today. Is there anyone here online concerning the Roswell Symphony Orchestra Spring Concerts? Is there anyone online? If there is, if you'd please identify yourself to the committee at this time.
Good morning, all. My name is Sherry Perman. I'm the Executive Director of the Roswell Symphony Orchestra.
Good morning. Please speak to the committee.
Alrighty. Thank you for hearing me this morning. This year, we're proud to celebrate 61 years and have an exciting spring planned, if all goes well in the case of having live events. In February, we will be presenting a family concert featuring Peter and the Wolf, a symphonic fairy tale for children. Our season finale concert in May will be in conjunction with the Roswell Cinco de Mayo Festival. The RSO has hired the Mariachi Aztlan, a nationally renowned mariachi group, for 3 days of musical performances and educational outreach. They'll also be joined on stage with the Ballet Folklorico from the University of Texas, and we anticipate that these two well-known ensembles will be a large draw for patrons from all over New Mexico as well as Texas. This past spring, the RSO generated approximately 160 total room nights for our February concert alone. Unfortunately, our large 60th anniversary season finale concert had to be canceled due to COVID. This spring, we will surpass that number by just housing our out-of-town RSO musicians and guest artists. We anticipate approximately 234 rooms for musicians alone for the spring. And obviously, we completely understand the funding at this time. It's so up in the air, but we are requesting $4,700, which would mainly go towards digital marketing campaigns designed to target audiences in New Mexico and West Texas. And we've chosen this form of advertising because of its great success in increasing out-of-town ticket sales this past spring. Thank you so much for your consideration, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Anyone have any questions or comments? Thank you so much. We do appreciate what the symphony brings to Roswell. I am an attendee and thoroughly enjoy it, and we do appreciate all the hard work that goes on just to make these things happen. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, committee, I think that what we have before us is a decision to make. I think that we heard the presentations earlier as to where we are financially. We do not know what the governor is going to give us today or in 2 weeks or in 2 more weeks. We just don't have a crystal ball to predict the future with. My recommendation would be, just as what Councilor Roebuck alluded to earlier, is not vote no on these things, which is what logically we would have to do with what money we have right now, but instead is to table all 3 of these to where when we see a pickup and we see the ability, we don't have to start going through the system all over again to get it brought back to us. We will be able to quickly gather and make those decisions to make these effective and get these folks the funding they need. And might I say as well, I want to give some appreciation On the OTV board, I spoke with one of their members, Kerry Moore, and they passionately want to help these entities, and I appreciate her kindness in reaching out to me just to ask if I have any questions or any concerns, because they do see the benefit of these things in our community. So I appreciate those on the OTB right now that are having to make these difficult decisions to bring to us as well. So, but if there's any questions or comments.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a point of clarification, I can't remember who it was, but somebody alluded to some of the numbers that staff has presented to us about the number of beds and stuff, et cetera. And I think that while that's one point of data we use to make decisions, it certainly is not the only point of data. You know, this is it's not a hard and fast kind of thing. We have to make larger considerations about the benefit to the community of these events, and certainly we're not restricted to exactly if this organization put this much money in, then they get it back out. So it's just one point of data that we use to help us make decisions or rationalize the decisions we make. So, but it certainly doesn't. We're not compelled or confined by that particular data point. I also do want to say to all these three events, you know, which have been going on for some time, and have been made great contributions to this community, and you know, and I think this is something that obviously it warrants discussion. But is this a scenario? And I don't know the answer to this. I'm not necessarily suggesting this, but is this a scenario? Should our GRT continue to stay strong, where we might, you know, reinforce the lodgers tax from GRT to support this? I know that would be. I would never ever say that in any situation ever, but perhaps in this extreme time, it might be. And I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but I think that's a discussion that we need to be having as we think about this over the next month, and maybe not. Again, it's something that we've never done before. I don't think it's something we should do regularly, but these are kind of extreme times. So, and based on, again, where our finances are and where GRT and obviously some potential other revenue through the CARES Act and things like that. So I think we should at least explore that, because I think that unfortunately I feel like the hotels are going to be the last thing to come back, based on, you know, my work in the tourism industry and looking at forward, that they're going to be the hardest hit and the longest hit as well. So, again, I'm not saying that we should do that. I don't want to paper quoting me saying that Jacob Robick said we're going to take GRT money and put it into lodgers tax. I don't want that on record, but I think we should at least have that conversation and talk through where we are with that, and of course all of our other priorities too, of course. So,
All right. Any other comments, discussion? I will entertain a motion, if there is one, to table these till a future time.
do we need to table them, or can we just not take action? I know you prefer we table them.
Well, I prefer to have a clean record, so if you would take action on that.
I would agree with our clerk. I think that taking action allows for distinction, that it's still floating around up there. If we don't take action, there
Right.
could be the potential of
Well,
having to
if
start
the
over.
chair then would entertain a motion to table all three.
Yes, sir.
Are you okay with one motion?
That's
to that?
fine.
Yeah, okay. And I also know not to run afoul of the city clerk. That's always a bad idea, so whatever she recommends, we go with. So let's go ahead, and Chair, I make a motion to table items 8, 9, and 10 on today's agenda, to be taken up when the committee sees fit.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, that we table the consideration request for funding for the 37th Milk Triathlon, Hike It and Spike It, and Roswell Symphony Orchestra Spring Concerts for 2021 until a future date deemed by this committee. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. Okay. All right, thank you. Hopefully, we're going to see a major change swiftly, and we'll be jumping right back into this quickly.
Yes.
To get those folks where they need to be.
Thank you.
All right, let's move forward with consideration of approval to award the recommendation for the water, wastewater, and solid waste rate study to New Gen Strategies and Solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm just going to start it off. We do have Lorenzo Sanchez and Abraham Chaparro on the other room, and I will call upon them to just make any additional comments, as well as Dave Yankee from New Gen Strategies and Mike Crepo from Park Hill Engineering Firm, who are on the go-to meeting. So this was an item that we did discuss even during the development of the preliminary and final budget, that we wanted to set aside some funds for moving forward with an actual rate study for water, wastewater, and solid waste. As we talked in the past, I think the council has allowed us to be able to separate the funds, because for many years, water and wastewater were all in one fund. The landfill and sanitation collections were all in one fund. So now we're able to start to separate those, which will allow us to better account for the revenues that are being collected to offset the actual cost of services. So we sought some proposal from New Gen Strategies and Solutions, along with Park Hill, Smith, and Cooper for the rate study. The city will be utilizing a HGAC buying contract agreement, and what that is a similar agreement that we use like CES, is a purchasing agreement that will allow us to be able to piggyback on. As you saw in your packet, the proposed study will cost around $117,693, and that will include all the rates for water, wastewater, solid waste, and landfill. So I just kind of wanted to give the committee a quick overview, and at this time I will ask Abraham and Lorenzo just to come up here and just add any additional questions or any comments in regards to the study.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee. I'll stand for any questions. As you know, the infrastructure is constantly evolving. We're trying to improve it, and it's very expensive to improve the infrastructure on a daily basis. I mean, we spend millions of dollars on these capital projects, as you guys are well aware, and they continue to keep coming up where we have large diameter valve replacements, we have new construction that needs to be designed in for expansion of the growth of the city. In the wastewater side, we have our new screw presses coming in, and that's a $5.5 million loan there. We actually have to meet a new permit on our dissolved oxygen basin, and that's another project that's going to be coming in front of you, where we have to meet a permit of 4.1 dissolved oxygen level on our effluent. So that's going to be coming up. We're going to go to design here pretty quick on that one. We already did a study, and we'll be coming to you with that one also. So, I mean, there's continual costs coming up on improving the infrastructure. So with that, I stand for any questions if you have any questions on this study.
Any questions? Concerns? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Council. How you doing? Abraham Chaparro, current Director of Solid Waste. As you see some of the challenges that water is having, we're having the same challenges as solid waste as well. So piggybacking off of this study will kind of help me see exactly what the cost is of my operation. So what it costs me to have a driver drive out to your home, pick up your refuge, and come back. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the current routes that we're designing and building right now as we speak. We're looking for a lot more efficiencies in the way we collect the commodities, which is a fancy word for refuse or garbage. But we want to utilize this study, kind of give us a baseline of where we can go forward. So again, like Water was saying, we come across a lot of challenges. These studies have not been done in a long time. So we want to kind of bring Roswell to that modern forefront of, doing our business open and transparently, but also being highly efficient in what we do. And with this rate study, I'm sure we're going to be looking at stuff for, hey, we can stop doing this and we can start doing this, and we can kind of go forward in the right direction. And with that, I stand for any questions that you might have.
Questions, concerns from committee members? Councilor Orpesa, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions. I've just a comment. To me, it seems like we're doing things backwards. Because it seems like the study should have been done prior to separating wastewater and water and so forth. And then we went ahead and deleted all the fees for the landfill. And to me, it seems like we're just doing it backwards. I mean, we should have done this a long time ago before going to this step. And I think $117,000, I mean, at least the way I understand it, the budget is pretty low. And so I have a hard time trying to spend $117,000 on a study, which I would hope that the city would be able to do their own study within the city itself and help save $117,000 instead of spending that kind of money. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So if I could respond to that, yes, you're right. We should have done it maybe a different way. I wasn't here at the time, but I'm sure there was a reasoning behind it. However, having the availability of system analytics, someone running statistics, someone running GIS, those are individual full-time positions that would be pretty hard-pressed for the city to hire to do a rate study. The benefit of this is that we have all that availability to us. They'll design it and build it for us, and then we can utilize that information. It could have been a better path, but like I said, I wasn't here for that decision-making process. But we're here now, we're making the effort, we're going forward, and I think it's a great opportunity for the city of Roswell, in my opinion.
If I may just say as well that regardless of where we were at the time, this is where we are now, and I believe we need to move forward in a way that's going to be most beneficial for what our future looks like. And I just know as I look here, I see what environmental practice management directors cost per hour, and senior consultants and analysis and these kind of things, and I don't know that the city would want to have full-time analysts and consultants. It would end up costing us, I think, a whole lot more than $117,000 to keep folks like this on staff to be able to do this kind of work for us. I would dare say I don't know that we have the expertise. Y'all have expertise, but not in this area. I don't think that city staff has expertise to be able to do its own in-house study and come out with the same kind of conclusions as what we are looking to get that's going to be for better practice for the municipality in the future. Any other thoughts or comments? All right, I would maintain a motion. Just 1 minute. Did we get an answer on what I'd asked you? If you can hit your, yes.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and just again, Mr. Yankee and Mr. Craper are on the go-to meeting in case if you all would like for them to introduce themselves and come, or just to give you kind of an overview of their company, they will stand by.
Are they online right now? Where's our IT?
Yes, this is Dave Yankee, the Managing Director for the Environmental Practice for NewGen.
Yes, Dave, if you could please just maybe either vilify or correct, could the city of Roswell, do you foresee that a city like Roswell could do their own study and come up with the same analysis as your company could do for us?
You have great staff. What we find, though, bottom line, we get hired by cities across the country to do these types of studies because your current staff have full-time jobs already. And to do this type of analysis, a lot of times they don't have the time or, and no offense, the expertise in looking at peaking ratios on water consumption and issues like that for allocating costs. And so that's why we do a lot of these studies across the country.
Okay, thank you. I had one question as I was looking at the project schedule and budget. On the project components and proposed budget, it showed a subcontractor markup of 5%, and the proposed budget of that was $560. I just wanted to know, just for clarification, since this will be public record, is that a miscalculation, or is that a 5% of something other than what we're seeing proposed?
No, that is correct. That is a 5% markup on Park Hill Smith and Cooper, who is our subcontractor. Their fees are approximately $12,000.
Okay.
And that's for oversight of the work that they're doing, because we will be responsible for overseeing their work.
All right, just wanted that clarification. I would sure hate for this to pass to full council and be approved, just to find out that we were looking at a 5% based on an 111,395, and then we would be trying to make a change there. So just wanted to make sure we had that clarification. Any other
Sure.
questions for the representative comments? Thank you so much for your patience with our committee today. We're going to vote at this time. I would entertain a motion from the committee.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend to full council to award award the contract. What is this thing?
The water, wastewater, solid waste and landfill rate study.
Yes, award the solid waste and landfill water rate study to New Gen Strategies and Solutions.
Second.
Mr. Chair, is
Yes,
this
ma'am.
going to consent agenda?
To consent.
Thank you.
The motion's been made that this be sent to consent at the committee, at the full council meeting next week. And we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Now back out
Thank
to
you.
the warm sun out there, right? Thank you. All right, and last but not least, considering recommendation of a change order to North Garden Bridge project, page 84 in your packet.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. What we have before you is consider recommendation of change order to the North Garden Bridge project in the amount of $228,298.99 to extend the project limits. You'll see on the slide, this is some of the work that was underway on Sunday. You can see how they cut along the roads, parallel and transverse. You can see the depths. You can see what happens when you start cutting like that. The pavement gets pushed up of the already bad pavement that we have. Just to give you an idea. You have 3 alternates in front of you that engineering performed. I will say that this is brought to you because when Water Maintenance Transmission has done the work, alternate 3 would be the normal way of fixing it or patching it. And my suggestion was just add it to the project. That way we'll take care of it now, and you don't want to have a patchwork right next to a new project. As you look at the big picture for Garden Street, we have been looking at Garden from 2nd to this bridge. The ICIP has a project for the bridge on North Garden that would connect to this and go to Cherry. And our plan that was canceled for this year, we were going to mill and fill and do a sidewalk on Garden from 2nd to Cherry. So we have been looking at the corridor in 3 different projects. So I would make the plug now for ICIP that you know, the bridge would connect from here to Cherry Street. So alternate number 3 would be the normal patch, which we're gonna have to do anyway regardless. Alternate number 1 was a little bit cheaper one.
Okay, can I ask you just, I'm sorry, but as you're
Yes, sir.
hitting each one of them, let's hit it patching with what?
With full hot mix and stuff.
Okay, so full hot mix, option 3 is a.
They're all repair the curb and gutter that's been broken, all repair the dry pads that have been done and been messed up.
Okay.
Full roadway repairs. I call it a patch because if you look at picture number 3, you got strips just covering the,
Where you've cut it out.
where we've cut it up. And if you look at the back of the pictures, we have to go in there and saw cut and square everything off. So, I mean,
So as you're going through each one of these, price of option 3 is?
option 3 would be annual maintenance, which if this request is done, will be done anyway. That's on page 89 of your packet. So with tax, $156,549.04. And that was why my recommendation was speaking with the water maintenance and transmission and with the staff of my project is we ought to just add it to this project, do it right, alternate number 2, which is $228,000. And yes, it'll be $70,000 more than the patch, but you're going to have a significantly, in my estimation, a more cost-effective project. And water maintenance transmissions here, Utility Director, Mr. Sanchez, if you have any questions on the utility work. But from my point of view as engineer, it's just better for us to do the fix now for $70,000 more. You have your choice of either do alternate 1 or 2, because alternate number 3 will have to get done anyway, put the road back in service.
Okay, and I say this in a respectful way. I'm going to help me because I'm not an engineer. Sell this to me, okay? Because I look at this and I think that if I can drive on the road in option 3, I'm saving money. That's the way I'm thinking. So you're wanting option 2. I need that sold to me. Help me better understand.
Alternate number 3 is also part of the bridge project, which we had funded before COVID, and those funds were pulled back.
Okay.
So
So that is no additional funding, except for the 70, or is it an additional funding of the 156?
well, if you put it as a road project, all the money is going to be assigned to the road. If water maintenance transmission is participating with their $156,000, and then we're taking out a capital
Okay.
$70,000, but that's not my decision.
Okay, that gives me clarification with option 3 there.
Okay.
So-
And the other thing is, Mr. Chairman, with option number 3, let's say we are successful and we get funded for the bridge project. Assuming that either we pay it for it out of a future city project, or it does make ICIP again and gets funded again in this in legislative process, why would you want to patch it? Spend $150,000 and then come back, even though it'd be state legislative money, and pull it out. And
Okay.
so that's part of the rationale that I'm looking at. Again, that's why I preluded with, we're looking at the whole corridor.
I understand, sure. A couple of more questions there again, because I'm trying to.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to buy a
Absolutely.
Cadillac here, okay, so I just need to understand. So what time usage benefit am I going to get out of 2 that I'm not going to get out of 3? What is the is it just aesthetic, or am I going to get a much longer, and I get that, of course, the rest of the asphalt there that's being taken up and the news putting down is going to last longer, but what is my timeline of what you foresee of usage I'll get out of number 3 versus number 2?
Number 3, the patch will hold up longer, but the parts that we didn't patch will continue to fade away.
Okay.
Because we do full, I call it a patch, but we put the full depth surfacing, 6 inches of hot mix, 6 inches of base course, because we have to realize that the loading on Garden Street is sufficient with the It's an auxiliary truck route. You also have the livestock there, and there's the trucks there.
Okay.
I mean, just as an engineer, say, why pay the 150,000 for a patch when we can add a little bit more and do a better job?
Okay. My last question, I guess, will be probably for the finance department. I need to know where if regardless of which one is chosen, where those funds are, have we identified a place for these funds to be pulled from?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and committee members, so in speaking with Louis on this project, we did identify an existing project that the council did approve that has set aside some money there. However, that project is not projected to begin until probably the start of next year and not be completed, and it could possibly carry over into next fiscal year. So there's about $500,000 there that we can use part of that money for, if the council opts for option number 2 as recommended, we can use that funding as we move into next fiscal year, and that other projects moving forward, we can always kind of, since it's going to carry possibly into next fiscal year, we'll fund that.
Kick the
gap.
can.
Yes. So-
Okay. Is there any other questions or discussion from other committee members? Yes, you have the floor, Councilor Roebuck.
Thank you, Chair. And this is just to help me understand. I think I've got this down. I should, since I'm an infrastructure committee. But, so we're finishing up the one bridge on Garden.
Okay, as you look, as you look at the.
But there's a second bridge that you still want to replace.
Correct.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure that we kind of understood that. The farther south, closer to the sale barn, there's a second, smaller bridge that needs replacing, that you probably don't even notice as a bridge when you go over it, because it's based on the size, but there's a bridge there. And so explain to me how this connects to that. Is that, can you help me with that? How close that is?
Okay,
to this?
let me explain
Sure.
everything. So as you look at the top of the picture,
Yeah.
where the gray ends, that's the southern limits of the bridge that we're working with right now. Okay? And when I did the estimate for the second bridge, I believe it's 6091 or 6061, I forget what the bridge number is, by the sale barn. What we do, we want to take out, the estimate includes the bridge plus road work to tie on to the North Garden Bridge. Again, we're trying to do corridors, trying to not leave patches in between or areas in between, and that's how we would tie it in. We did have the money, the legislator did give us. They gave us 2 appropriations. I believe one was like 550, the other one was 300,000. So we had 850,000 prior to the callback or the veto by the governor for the bridge by the sale barn, which would have covered this area for construction. But again, we just want to do sections. In my mind, why pay the 150,000 when we're striving to get a project done one way or the other, and hopefully, again, making the pitch for the ICIP meeting that you had tonight to have that bridge back on the list as we had it last year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
My last thing, it's good to have Mr. Nebb back. If you could come to the microphone for just a moment and just tell me, as most senior management, your recommendation in this project.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It would be my recommendation that we take the alternate to as recommended. We do know where the money is at, where we can find that to get that done. The full repair of that, I think, it's less of a nickel and dime trying to hold things together, and I believe that it'll last a lot longer for us and have no problems in the future if we take that recommendation.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you very much. I would like to see, just because of the change and everything, this just go to full council, not on consent, but for full council, so that everyone has a great understanding as to what we are proposing. So if we have a recommendation on alternative 2, or if there's one for something else, but let's start there and see what we've got.
So Chair, as I believe that if we just consider for approval as presented, that's the presentation has a recommendation.
That is correct.
Yes, sir.
So we don't need to actually select one.
Correct,
We just
yes.
have to. we just-
Number two is
Yes.
the request that's being made. Yes, sir.
So with that, if the chair is ready to entertain a motion, I move that we recommend to full council approval of change order number 1, Garden Bridge project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to send to full council for this consideration. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. I believe that is all that we have to come before us today. Is there any public participation on the phone? Any public participation in the wings? Let's just double check. All right, let this meeting be adjourned. Everyone have a great day and a safe Labor Day weekend. God bless. See you at 5 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.